Good morning, good afternoon, good night, whichever time you're tuning into the channel here. I'm Ben from Side River Co-op, and thanks for stopping by and checking out our new series, So You're Going Backpacking. We're going to break this video down into a series of different categories based on tents, backpacks and sizes for your trips, sleeping bags and pads, pot, stove, cookware, bear bags, all things cooking, headlamps, clothing, toiletries, a miscellaneous category where we might have things like knives, saws, water bottles, things like that, and then finally we'll talk about the water filters. And you can look at the timestamp down in the description or click on the progress bar down below and jump to a section if you're interested in a specific topic. So first, maybe the most important piece of equipment, or the one that everyone knows they need, is going to be the tent. For me, I would say either a 2-person or a 1-person tent is all you need. You could go with a larger 3 or 4-person tent, but you'll find on most backpacking trips, 2-person tents or buddying up with a overnight buddy is the best way to go, and so a 2-person tent's nice. 3-season tents are a great start. You'll find some that are good for winter months as well. You might call them a 4-season tent. But for the most part, a 3-season tent is all you need, and it'll suffice for summer, spring, and fall camping. I've found that buying quality tents does get quality experience out of the product. And so, for example, I would suggest you buy a freestanding tent. Maybe a brand that you could look into is REI, Big Agnes, Nemo, MSR, or Marmot. My favorite tent, the one that I would choose any day that I've used from my dad and other guys in our group, is the REI Half Dome. Best tent around for the price, quality, and comfort. Lightweight, does the trick, and great for any beginner or experienced backpacker. If you're going to buy a good tent like the one I just mentioned from REI, the Half Dome Plus or the Half Dome, roughly spend around $250 to $350 for those. Of course, you can spend way more. Of course, you can spend way less. But the big deal is making sure you get the perfect quality tent for your trip. Now up next is backpacks. Again, without a backpack, this trip's not even happening for you, right? The backpack might be the most important piece of equipment to actually spend money on. And the reason being, comfort and fit are key. This is the thing that's going to be on your back for the majority of the day. If you're hiking 5, 8, 10, maybe even 15 or 20 miles if you're into it, the backpack is important. So when I choose a backpack, in my opinion, the sweet spot for backpacks is going to be 45 to 55 liters. And the liter size of your backpack does matter. If you're going on longer trips, you need greater literage, if that's even a word. We're going to make it up now. But you need greater storage capacity, let's say, or greater volume it can hold. So if you're going on an overnight hike or maybe even a one-day hike, I would say that a 35-liter backpack is about the max that you need. You could go smaller, you could go slightly bigger, but 35 is going to get you what you need for an overnight trip or just a day hike out and back. Then my favorite, like I said, 45 to 55 liters. Now this 45 to 55 liter category is going to be important when it comes to 3 to 5 night trips. I find that anything I need to fit in my bag for 3 to 5 nights fits perfect into my Gregory 48 liter backpack. Then if you're wanting to do a longer, let's say 6-night trip, I would suggest that you go with a 60 liter and up bag for 6 nights or more. I would say Gregory, Osprey, or REI. And again, a common theme here, the REI brand, you're not going to go wrong with. Now, if we're talking about other bags as well, some of them come with included rain covers. For me, I have a rain cover on my Gregory back that's already integrated in. Some of these require you to buy them separately. You will encounter poor weather if you're out in the mountains, so just be prepared. Even though you think the weather forecast is great, some of these higher mountain systems or passes that we go through almost have their own weather system, so it's not uncommon to come up and get rained on for maybe 15 or 20 minutes and then see a beautiful day the rest of the day. Now let's move on to the sleep system. This might be one of the more things that make the camping experience more comfortable, is how good and how well integrated your sleep system is. Now we consider a sleep system to comprise of 4 parts. First one is your sleeping bag. Second being your sleeping pad. The third being your sleeping pillow. And the fourth being the clothing that you wear to bed. You'll come across two main types, or at least two types I would suggest. A synthetic material that's stuffed inside to help you stay warm, or a down one that has feathers stuffed inside that help you stay warm. There are some pros to the type of material that's stuffed inside the bag. If you have synthetic, it's cheaper, often dries faster because they treat it with certain things or they make it hydrophobic, and so synthetic material could be a good choice for someone who's maybe dabbling in backpacking or wants to save a little money. The styles that they come in, you get mummy, rectangular, and semi-rectangular. Depending on how comfortable you are in each of those might decide which one you choose. Now for me, mummy ones tend to be more difficult because you move with the bag as opposed to inside the bag. The rectangular ones tend to be a little too bulky when you pack them down, although they might be the most comfortable and most like sleeping in a regular bed. Now when we're talking about brands of sleeping bags, I would say Sierra Designs, Kelty, Nemo, REI are all great ones. Now, the sleeping bag's awesome. If you have it, you can stay warm, but if we're talking comfort in sleeping, sleeping pads are where it's at. Three types of sleeping pads, or three main ones people use. First are air sleeping pads, self-inflating, or closed cell foam. When we're talking about air sleeping pads, I find them the most comfortable and the best ones. They pack down great, they're super comfortable, and they're not entirely heavy. The self-inflating ones, they can be comfortable, but they're a little bit heavier. And last, the closed cell, they're light, they're cheap, they can be a little bulky, and if you ask me, they're not quite as comfortable. So if you're really concerned about how well you're gonna sleep, I might want to avoid those closed cells. But if you could sleep anywhere, like my 4-year-old, have a closed cell, or none at all, I guess, if you're tough enough. Now the next thing that's not necessary is a pillow. I have a Sea to Summit pillow that inflates. I find it's perfect. I can adjust how firm or how soft it is, and it packs down to the size of a baseball, maybe a little smaller than a baseball even, and it makes my trips entirely more comfortable. And then lastly, when we're talking about our sleep system, we want to talk about clothing. The clothing I sleep in, or I bring at least to have to sleep in should it get chilly enough. I have long underwear, wool, socks, and some sort of thermal base layer that I wear over my chest. Now before I get all full on into this video, I want to point out a few trips that Sad River Co-op has planned for this coming summer. The first trip I have planned is with Sage. He's the guy who helped me out with the Peak Design carbon fiber or aluminum tripod video that seems to be pretty popular. You can find the link up here. Sage and I are going out to the Cirque of the Towers, which is in Wyoming's Wind River Range. The second video I have planned earlier in this year is going to be with my sister, my future brother-in-law, and my other sister, and potentially my brother, and we're going to go to the Beaten Path in the Beartooth Mountains. Now they've never been backpacking before and they don't have hardly any of the gear, so their experience on this trip is motivating me to make this video so they can use it and see, and maybe those of you out there who are on your first trip can use it as well. The part of my video that's going to probably take the longest or have the most detail, because it comes down to personal preferences for a lot of this, is the cooking setup. This includes the food you'll pack, the stove, the pots, and maybe even your bear bag or bear storage solutions. So let's start with stoves. I always seem to pack dehydrated food for my dinners. Some people cook their food dehydrated and rehydrate it out on the trail. I just skip the step and buy things like Backpacker Pantry, freeze-dried or dehydrated meals. I'll even do Alpine Air, I believe is the brand. They're all good. You just find what you like and eat it. It's the best way to get decent food out on the trail, in my opinion, but I'm also a terrible cook. Take that for what it is. Stoves to heat up this water that you need to add to these dehydrated meals. I love my MSR Pocket Rocket. A bunch of the guys in our group have the MSR Pocket Rocket. There's roughly 6 to 8 of us that go, and I think at least half of us have some MSR brand stove. So I feel confident saying MSR is one of the best ones you could get. They pack down to next to nothing, they're very lightweight, and they can heat up and boil a pot of water in a matter of minutes. I highly suggest that brand. Other brands people tend to go with though, get Jetboil, Primus, or maybe even Snow Peak. Not saying they're not good, I don't have experience with them, but I just know my MSR is the only thing I ever want to have. Each of these stoves require fuel. My MSR requires isopro fuel, which is a mix between isobutane and propane. They typically come in 4, 8, and 16 ounces. depending on how long your trip is, should tell you what size of those to get. And here's my little cheat sheet that I kind of go with. I say 4 ounces for a 2-night trip. That should be enough to get you through your dinners and maybe breakfast, coffees, whatever. 8 ounces is my sweet spot, 3 to 5 days. Anytime I go on a trip, an 8-ounce can will last me those 3 to 5 days. Then, if you're going on an even longer trip, 16 ounce might be worth considering. The pot is something that it's not what most people think right off the bat is super important, but I find I bought a pot that I love and I'm sticking with it, and I can't imagine having something else that's not as good. The type of pot that all backpackers seem to strive for is something titanium. It's because they offer great resistance to burn scarring on the pot. They're very lightweight, they're very durable and strong. Titanium pots are the way to go if you ask me. I've had mine now for 7 years and I think I paid 35 or 40 bucks for it. Go for something like that if you can. Spend the good money the one time so it lasts you and you never have to consider it again. And so if you're in the market to buy, let's talk about brands. For me, I have the Toaks Titanium pot. I think it's 750 or 850 milliliters, I'm not entirely sure, but that range is about what you should expect to buy. Other brands people suggest: Snow Peak, MSR, or GSI. All great brands to go with, and you're not going to go wrong if you buy one of them, especially titanium. You can buy a lot of these pot sets with lids that could double as like a little skillet or a little pan. I never actually do any real cooking within my pot, so I skip out on that. But if you plan on actually cooking some sort of meat or something within your pot, maybe it's something to consider. Great pro tip from Zach, who also helps out with this channel, is it's always nice to have markings either inside of your pot or on the outside of your water bottle, so you know exactly what amount of water you need to add to that pot before you boil, so when you add it to your dehydrated food, you know exactly the right amount is in there. Then when it comes to eating out of those bags, we find that a spoon, spork, or fork that has a longer handle is nice to reach down in the bottom of those bags and eat with. Now, as I mentioned, backpacker meals, they usually require about 2 cups of water. We also find adding a little more water than that's good because sometimes they don't suggest enough water goes in, but it's up to you what your preference is, how thick maybe you want your soup or macaroni and cheese or whatever it is you bought in your backpacking meal. Now, food storage. When you really get into these backcountry areas, food storage is something they emphasize. We do 2 main methods here. I guess you could essentially say there's 3 main methods for storing food. First, if you're in a place that has bear boxes, you can store your food in a bear box. But I find it's always good to have an alternate method should there not be a bear box. So what I like to do, I prefer a bear canister. Bear canisters are great because they can double as stools, and they can usually hold about 5 nights worth of food in them depending on the size, but most of the time 5 nights of food. The con of them is you can't really manipulate them or change the shape of them. They are what they are. The pro of that though is it always is going to take up the same amount of space in your bag so you can pack accordingly. The original method I went though was a bear bag that you hang from trees. Most of the guys in our group still do this, and it's very convenient, very easy. Just sometimes you might encounter an area where there are no trees to hang your bear bag, and so you need some sort of backup plan. All right, now what are you gonna wear on your hike? Let's talk about clothing. For clothing, I bring 3 outfits or 3 sets of clothes along. I already talked about one, my sleeping clothes, but the other 2 are important. I tend to pack 1 pair of clothing in my bag and then I wear 1 clothing, and I'll alternate with each night rinsing them off in a stream nearby or whatever, just to try to get some of the sweat and grit out of it. So my first set of clothes, I have some sort of convertible pant that I can zip off and have be shorts. Sometimes it gets warm out there or the sun gets strong, you might want to zip them up to keep the sun off or add a little extra warmth. Then I have some sort of lightweight, long sleeve article of clothing that I can wear that will wick away moisture but also protect me from the sun and add a little bit of warmth. That's my first set of clothing I pack. Then in my bag, I'll also have a pair of pants. I don't do the zip offs, I'll just have a pair of pants, usually Prana or Columbia pants. I'll wear those. And then I will also have a short sleeve shirt of some kind in case it does get a little warm. And again, all the material is lightweight and it wicks away the moisture. And then lastly, like I said, it's not uncommon for rainstorms to hit you. So I suggest getting some sort of rain suit, whether it's rain pants and a rain jacket, something that can keep you dry. I have a Marmot rain jacket. I know people who love the Frog Tog stuff because it's cheap and it does the trick and it can keep you dry. Headlamps. Do not forget a headlamp. You could bring a flashlight, but you're gonna find that you're having to hold this flashlight all the time. Remember, there's no flip on a light switch and you're good. You need to have something that allows you to use your hands, but also gives you light. That's where the headlamp's perfect. You just put it on your head, click the button, boom, you have light to illuminate whatever it is you're doing with your hands. So now let's talk about water filters. For me, filtering water is my least favorite activity when I'm out on the trail.
It's my least favorite thing about backpacking right here.
So I spent a little bit of extra money to get something that's gonna make this task easier. I found my MSR Hyperflow filter is perfect. I can pump it, I can hook it up, pump it, a whole water bottle in less than a minute. I have 2 water bottles, so within about 3 minutes, I can completely fill up my water supply and move on. Early on in my hiking and backpacking, I went with a Sawyer squeeze filter, and it did the trick great. It was cheap, it did what I needed to. The only problem with it is it took considerably longer, sometimes 3 times longer than my simple pump that I use now. Now onto toiletries. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but this is going to be a separate small bag you get that you can easily pull out when you need to do your morning or evening duties, depends on when you do it. For me, it's a toothbrush, toothpaste, some sort of soap, toilet paper, a bag to pack out waste if you're in a pack in out area, and sunscreen. Now for those miscellaneous items, items that you may not plan to bring when you go on your hiking trip, especially if it's your first one. And a lot of these are not necessary, but I enjoy having them along. A knife. I also bring a handsaw along. When I get to have fires out in the backcountry, I don't want to be chopping away or carrying a heavy axe. I've got this nice little handsaw that's roughly 8 inches long, and it saws straight through any of the wood you'll find in the backcountry. You need some sort of fire starter. We always tend to pack little rolls of duct tape because it has multiple purposes. It lights like that, and it can be very useful if you need to make quick patches or fix or repairs out on the trail. I always like to bring ibuprofen or a small first aid kit. You'll find some people in your group, or maybe even yourself, when you get up to the higher elevations, you might suffer from a little bit of an altitude sickness. You want to have something along to deal with that. You'll need bug spray in the backcountry. Mosquitoes love the backcountry for some reason. Don't have your trip ruined because you're constantly smacking at mosquitoes as they're biting you 24/7 as you're out there. Another agreement our groups come up with are camp chairs. Entirely not necessary. Something that adds weight. But the comfort return on the camp chair is second to none. It's the one piece of equipment that can really make your trip comfortable, enjoyable, and something you want to do over and over. I have the REI FlexLight, I believe is the name of the chair. I would highly suggest you get that. There's other options out there, but that's the one I have and I love it. And then lastly, something that you want to consider is the water bottle you get. I simply get a Nalgene water bottle and I take 2 along. They're cheap and they do the trick. And our final tip from Zach, founding member of Saddle River Co-op, and also who runs Log and Jotter, the guys I keep all my notes for my videos in. Zach brings some sort of cover-all spice along that he likes to add to his meals. I don't do it, I don't find it necessary, but Zach loves having good food on the trails. So if you want to add some spices to your backpacker meals to make them a little more enjoyable, have at it. Some of these things you'll find are all about what makes the trip enjoyable and comfortable for you. And even though there's people out there that do ultralight backpacking and are always trying to shave away minute fraction, milliounces, whatever we're gonna call it, light weights, grams, whatever, that's not my style. And you need to decide what your style is too. There's nothing wrong with those people. Sometimes that's the challenge. But I find enjoyable, comfort, having fun is what makes backpacking my favorite activity to do. And so you decide. Don't be afraid to buy what works best for you, or if something I mentioned doesn't work, buy something else. It's up to you. Backpacking is all about personal preference. Even though there's people out there who hike miles and miles a year, it comes down to what you like to do. And don't be discouraged if someone says, "Oh, that piece of gear is crap." If it works for you, it's the perfect piece of gear. So stay tuned. We'll go into a little more depth about each of these things from Saddle River Co-op in our series, So You're Going Backpacking. The obligatory YouTuber plea. Subscribe, like, all those things. They help out the algorithm. They help me with my family algorithm. The more people that watch this channel, the more I can convince my wife to let me go backpacking. I say it every time, and that's because it's true. So, Ben from Side River Co-op here, tuning out. Keep an eye out for more videos. Thanks for stopping by, and hopefully you enjoy your first backpacking trip. We'll see you later.